Welcome back, episode 15 of the Story of God. So far, we've learned about the God story of coming up to and including the beginning of the Messiah, right? He has chosen the people of Israel to be his remnant, his righteous people, his representatives on the earth, and they just totally screw it up, and God just goes, all right, fine, put you into exile, but I'm going to give you all these prophecies about a Messiah who's actually going to do the right thing. He's going to save everybody. He's going to save everybody from oppression, save all the sins, just all the stuff. And so lots of prophecies we've written on the board about who this Messiah is and what he's going to do. And so far, Jesus has ticked off about half of them. And we've learned that Jesus is the Messiah. It's not a secret. God was pretty plain about that. But he is very humble, right? He's not, he didn't get born as a prince into a king's house. He got born as a normal person in a working class house, in a small town, in a barn even. I mean, just super humble beginnings. And even the beginning of his life, he's very humble, saying, hey, baptize me. I don't need to baptize you yet. You just baptize me first. And then he shows that he's got authority. Like, he just comes with power over all the sickness that people bring him and the demon-possessed people, and he just casts them out just by authority. Just like, hey, come out. And so Jesus starts his ministry warring against the kingdom of Satan and his oppression and his control over the human race. And Jesus goes, nope, that's not how we're going to do things anymore. The kingdom of God is here. And so that's where we start off, where we're really learning about the kingdom of God. Listening ears. Jesus wanted everyone to experience the kingdom of God and know what it is like. So he sent out his growing number of disciples into the towns ahead of him. He said, heal the sick, raise the dead, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. As you go, tell everyone, the kingdom of heaven is here. Not long afterward, they returned and told Jesus how surprised they were that even the demons were under their command. For 3 years, Jesus demonstrated the kingdom of God and what God himself was like. He healed diseases, blindness, internal injuries, paralysis, and deafness. He cast out many evil spirits. He fed 5,000 hungry Jewish men one day, plus their families, and then 4,000 Gentile men, or non-Jewish men, and families another day with just a few loaves of bread and fish. He had control of the earth's elements with just his words, controlling the threatening wind and waves with a rebuke. And he rebuked one fig tree with a curse as well. He had authority over death. He brought back people from death. He walked on water and also enabled one of his disciples to do the same. On a mountaintop once, some of his disciples saw his body become transfigured into pure light. Throughout his 3-year ministry, there were 4 primary things Jesus demonstrated with his actions over and over about the kingdom of God. He regularly forgave people of their sins. He healed their broken bodies of sickness and pain and death. He rid them of demons, and he showed God's love for them. Everywhere Jesus went, he taught people this one thing: the kingdom of God has come. Turn from your sin and selfishness and turn to God. One day he climbed up a hill with a group of his closest followers. They sat down together and Jesus began to teach them more about God's kingdom. He said, God blesses those who realize their need for him, the humble and poor, the gentle and merciful. The kingdom of God belongs to them. God blesses the pure in heart and those who hunger and thirst to be with him. He went on, forgive and you will be forgiven. Give and it will be given to you. If someone steals your shirt from you, offer them your coat too. Live generously. Love your enemies. Anyone can love his friends, but you are to love the unlovable. You must live differently, doing what is good, just like God. Jesus often taught about the kingdom of God using short stories that had powerful meanings called parables. He said, the kingdom of God is like a tiny seed, small at first, but it grows into a large tree. It's like yeast spread into a large ball of dough. Just a little will change a lot. And it's like a great feast where the poor, the forgotten, and the outcast all get invited. People were astonished at Jesus' teaching and wisdom about God's kingdom. They understood some of these pictures, but others remained a dark mystery, like when Jesus taught that he was the way to the kingdom. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody gets to the Father except through me. He also said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. If you really trust in my teachings and live them out, you are really my disciples. My teachings are truth and sets people free. One day, one of the teachers of the law asked Jesus, when is this kingdom going to come? Jesus replied, the rule of God does not arrive by keeping rituals or by how good you can keep the laws. Nobody will say, look, it's here, or look, it's there, because the king's domain, God's rule, is within you right now. All right, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
Okay, so Jesus starts out by sending out his disciples.
You take it first.
So he was like, first this, then this, then
Yeah, literally.
I got the first part.
He sends out his disciples. They go do wonders. They're healing people. They're declaring the kingdom of God.
He said specifically to them, I remember this is one of the only things I remember, before they left, that their job was to heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. Is that the other one?
Yep.
And he said, freely you have received, so freely you will give.
Money. And the fact that what he did is he found these men, gathered them, then sent them out. So he sends out these men. We know the span of his ministry now has been 3 years, and he taught. No, now I'm going too far.
Well, that's fine. Yeah.
He taught through, which is amazing though, because if you think about it, if we look at ancient history and ancient times, what was the educational level of most people? If most people are working maybe peasantry type jobs or whatnot, they're not necessarily highly educated. He teaches also in parables, so he now is illustrating truths about his kingdom in ways people can understand rather than.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, which is really, so he's not just a healer and not just God, but he's also a great teacher. He's teaching people about God's kingdom, which is awesome.
and big points. Show people and tell people what this kingdom is like. Here's how you do that. You're going to heal bodies, raise the dead, free people. But then Jesus himself demonstrated it, and those were the primary things you listed. He set people free from their sins. He healed their bodies. He was demonstrating to them what that kingdom is like. But then the other really big point, and I love that was all in one piece, because that's just a big story arc of it's the New Testament all summed up basically, which is the kingdom isn't just out here, it's in here. And that was a piece that we wouldn't have understood either. I don't think we ever really still do, but everyone's asking, you keep talking about this kingdom and telling us what it's like, and it's so opposite of anything we've ever thought a kingdom is, but where is it and when is it coming? And he's saying it's here, it's me, but it's in you.
And I love that. And Jesus says it's not your practices and rituals.
Yeah.
It's not the kingdom's here, it's in you. Yeah, that must have really rubbed the religious the wrong way when he said that. Yeah.
If you spent your whole life following each little detail of that law, and Jesus goes, yeah, that's not really important. Like, what?
I think we paint the religious people in, really harsh tones. If we back that down just a little bit and say these are people who felt like their job, because you just said it, so many people didn't have an educated life, but those who were educated were the religious, and they spent all their time studying the law that had been given and felt like their job was to adhere to it, but also force other people to adhere to it or point out if they weren't. They thought they were doing the right thing because they thought they were modeling the kingdom of God, but they had totally missed what the kingdom of God is. So when Jesus comes on the scene, he is the opposite of everything that they have now created this kingdom to be that's wrong. So he didn't just rub them the wrong way. He probably just infuriated them, but they also felt like it's our job to protect the law from you. But he was the one that was coming to fulfill it. So, everything's upside down. It's all upside down.
I like how history says that these guys, their heart was in the right place, and that they didn't want Israel to go into exile again. And so they're like, all right, we don't want that to happen again. Let's make sure that we keep this law, because our ancestors didn't keep the law. We're going to keep it, and we're going to do it the right way, right? And so they just, all these laws, they had more laws on laws on laws. They just anything they do to put a fence around the thing you shouldn't do, they put that fence there. And then Jesus.
But then
comes
they
like,
miss the spirit of it.
Right, and that's the real point. But still, I mean, we can't call them like the evil people, all of them, but most of them had, I think, a good heart there. But
Yeah.
I think that's a good lesson for us, right? Let's make sure that we are going back to Jesus, making sure that our heart is aligning with His heart, and we're doing things His way, right? Okay. Anything else you want to add to that story?
It feels wrong to just even rush past it because there's so.
There's more questions, but what?
He also brings back the casting out of demons. That was a recurring statement that we heard from the story.
He exercised power and control over every aspect of life, but he didn't use that power and control to hurt or crush or put beneath himself. He did it to free and to elevate and to liberate. And so even the motive behind everything is different than anything they've known before.
I think it mentioned in there that during his 3 years, he did 4 things. He forgave people over and over and over again. He healed sick and raised people from the dead and all that lumped into one. He drove out demons from people, and he just consistently showed people God's love, which is like, there it is. Like, that's the kind of king that he is.
Right.
And I love that it mentioned he just wanted to show God's love to people.
Yeah. And you mentioned it as well, but it wasn't just Jesus doing this, right? He sent out disciples, and they had the authority to do all this stuff too.
So that's a little mind-blowing in itself that these guys are now doing similar things to what
Yeah.
Jesus is doing.
Because if you're the kind of king that the world at that time, or even now, would know, it would be, I'm in control. You do what I say. You don't ever just send people out. They're ambassadors for him, but they're given power too. It's everything's backwards.
And it didn't really mention how he chose his disciples, but I mean, one can assume they were just average people. Like, literally, it could have just been anyone.
Yeah,
And
so
he
why didn't he...
chose-
Yeah, I think about that sometimes. Why didn't he pick the religiously astute? Why didn't he pick these guys who've been following the law and trying their hardest? Instead, he chooses some just average Joes. Yeah, that's also kind of... I resonate with that. Not resonate, but I think about that often.
Yeah. So Jesus, disciples also have power. How does that relate to the parables of the tiny seed growing into a tree, the yeast into the ball of dough, affecting the whole dough, right? Kind of compare those things and what's going on with the kingdom of God? What is this? What is expected here?
That it will spread, that we will, I mean, yeast has a job to do, and that's to work through all of the dough. A seed has a job to do. It's not just to stay small and in the ground and inside of a shell. It's supposed to grow into something. So yeah, that would be a mega theme, like big picture, meta. The kingdom is supposed to grow and spread.
Right. Yeah. And it is so far. Cool. So cover that. How is God's kingdom different than the governments and cultures we currently live in?
Like the people currently live in, or we currently live in?
We.
Oh.
Oh, them too, right? Same.
I mean, we've hit on a few of them already. I think power is a big one. The power that most people think of is control of others, of property, of possessions, of it's controlling others. They are under you. They may not be oppressed in the sense of, slavery, but it's any kind of elevate myself and push you down. Maybe not even with ill intent, but that is a different kind of power than what Jesus exercised. His power was exercised in order to liberate people, and that's not something that we see.
He
Not
was
to get
lifting
into
up the
politics.
bottom, right? He was lifting up the bottom to be healed and stuff.
Yeah, I think what you said, I also think like his entire mission was to show love to people too. And I feel like we live in a world that's so like inward focused and like what can I do to, I don't know, it's kind of selfish and like how can I be more powerful? How can I make more money? How can I me and like his entire goal was to do things for other people, which he's very selfless.
Yeah.
Give. Freely you've received, so freely give. That was one of the statements in there.
Yep. So we've learned about the kingdom of God. What does this say about the king himself?
We go back to the quality of God that we talked about originally is the love of God. What a loving God that he sees broken people that are hurting, people that have physical ailments that don't have remedies, and he wants to heal them. He wants to move in their life. He wants to be with them. That Jesus took time to obviously be with people. I mean, his ministry is 3 years long. Part of me always wonders too, what was undocumented that we don't know? Like what happened, there's so many other stories. Maybe we haven't, if this is just a glimpse of who we're seeing of God in just the 3 years, I can't imagine if there was even more written about him, what we would know.
I think in this culture and in ours, someone in a king role is served. And this king came to serve others. I think if you boiled it down to one thing, a king that they would know of would expect you serve me, you sacrifice for me, you even maybe to the point of your own life give yourself for me. But this king did it the opposite. I'll give myself for you. I will serve you. I will give. And that makes me emotional because it's so in the face of everything they knew. It's so upside down. It would be so confusing. And we're not even looking at the small details of a life. Like, this is a human being. Yes, it's God, but he's human. He gets tired. He gets hungry. Everyone needs something from you all the time, and you at some point need a break. But yet this king gave everything, and that was not a consideration.
Yep, that's good. Very good. What do we learn about the world we live in?
We're selfish.
It's just still really broken, and it's been broken since that curse.
Yeah.
It's been broken. But I also feel like with all that was happening in Jesus' ministry, that the world is looking for something. They're looking for an answer. They're looking for, what do we do to get out of this? Not get out of this, but how do we live? What do we do? Yeah.
And we're clearly broken because he has to keep forgiving us over and over and over again. So, like, even though it's right in front of your face, like he's doing these things, people are still needing forgiveness because they're still messing up. So,
do you think that part of our brokenness is that we look in the wrong places? Like, this is a culture when Jesus came on the scene that was expecting a particular person to come on the scene, that they were expecting this king, warrior, general, powerful, controlling, what they would picture. And do you think that we're broken that way and that we look to the wrong people or the wrong places for our rescue too? Where we look to, again, not to get political, but we look to, well, if our nation just had a different kind of a leader, that would rescue us or make things better. Or, we do that over and over. Maybe it's in a relationship. If I had a different husband or a different wife or a different teacher or a different boss, and we look in the wrong places rather than celebrate where we see the kingdom happening, which is in humility and in selflessness and service and generosity and freeing people from things that are bigger than just their physical circumstances.
Yeah.
done preaching a sermon now.
No, but I mean, I think to go further, a little bit further, is that instead of looking for other people and leaders to be fixing our problems, Jesus is saying, hey, the kingdom is in you. You go fix some problems yourself. And if everybody fixes a little bit of a problem, then the yeast, right, it just spreads.
Well done, Mark. Well
Mark, that's a
done.
sermon, because I think what you just said is so many people are looking for the solution. What if the solution's already been in your hand, it's been in your heart,
Yeah,
and you just have to tap into it?
yeah. And that's the next
Yeah.
question, like, what would the world look like if we all lived in this kingdom of God?
Far less broken.
I don't even think it needs to be if all of us did. If even some of us did, I think the world would be dramatically different. But you're right. We even as Christians say things like, well, we got to look to Jesus, which is of course true, but we leave out the part of like, I have a responsibility.
Yeah.
I have to be Jesus. I have to speak up. I have to serve. I have to give.
I think even, can I talk just current event? I don't want to get political, but just even current events. So if we handle the discussion of racism, I would ask myself, how would Jesus respond to racism right now? Well, if I see the scriptures, Jesus responds to brokenness with healing, that he cares for a broken person. I want to respond with that rather than saying, maybe like, once again, not trying to get political, it's up to leadership of a country to fix this. No. It's my decision to do something about this. And not just with racism, with anything happening in our nation. It's my decision. It's the church whole, and I think Di said it. Imagine not even just the people, like just a group of people. If just a group of people were activated and living and we're working towards solutions, oh man, I can't imagine what this world would look like.
Yeah, and he, just bouncing off of that, one of his goals was to free the oppressed, like the people that are hurting. And so imagining how much we could help by trying to do that in our own lives, like not always thinking about ourselves, but seeing the people that are hurting and trying to help free them and show love to them.
If we put this in the context of even poverty, and we say one viewpoint is, and I'm not saying it's either or, but one viewpoint is, well, if our government did a better job on programs that help the poor, we wouldn't have poor. Well, the poor are always going to be among us, but what if we looked at that as we each have a responsibility to help the poor? And if each of us helped somebody that was struggling or worse off than us, what a difference we could make. Rather than waiting for a big organization to help everybody, each of us helps somebody, and that makes a huge impact.
I keep feeling like when it comes to Jesus now, and I feel like, and I hope I'm not steering us away, but I feel like I keep thinking of activated living is the way Christ lived. I feel like before Christ, people were just like, yes, they were in the religious rituals and they're waiting on the Messiah, but Jesus comes on the scene, and these disciples, they're probably feeling the highest high of their life. Like they're feeling alive doing the work they're doing. I almost feel like, shouldn't that be the modern day Christian Christ follower? We feel alive doing what we're doing. That yes, it's not necessarily redundant living, but like when you're looking for the broken and those in poverty, and you clothe them and you feed them and you speak up for someone and you pray, someone is hurting and you literally pray for them to be healed. Like this is like I just want to leave this stage right now, go out into my city and do something and do something about it.
Yeah, that's good.
I feel like that's just the next step for us. Yeah.
So to put a little period on your racism comment, the Samaritans were the victims of racism back in this time period, right? And so I'll leave it to the reader or the viewer to really kind of study how Jesus interacted with the Samaritans, right? How he taught about the Samaritans. And so does this as an example teacher, right? How do we go off and kind of be a part of the solution there too? So that's how I'll put it there. We'll leave it at that, but it's good stuff. All right, with that, we'll end it. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Hopefully you're getting out of it. We we glossed over a lot of stuff in Jesus' life. There's a lot of parables, a lot of miracles that he did. Ask yourself those questions of what is Jesus doing, right? What is he trying to accomplish here? Because everything he did had a reason. So go off and what is he? Just ask those kind of questions. So dig a little bit deeper. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it.